India's latest urea tender fell short of expectations, with another round of buying likely ahead. At the same time, new U.S. sanctions on Russia left fertilizer untouched, a move that could carry major implications for global supply. Today, we'll look at what this means for prices, trade flows, and how both India and the U.S. are shaping fertilizer markets as we head into year-end. I'm Johanna Botat, and joining me today is Josh Linville, VP of Fertilizer at StoneX. Morning to you, Josh. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning once again.
So, as we discussed last week, India came up short in its latest urea tender. They locked in 430,000 tons out of a 2 million ton goal, with another tender expected in the coming weeks. Is this about tight supply or simply that sellers weren't willing to meet India's price levels?
Yeah, last week when we spoke about this, we knew 430 was all they were going to get, but we didn't have the final awards total. And we've made this mistake before internally. We sat there and tried to make a story out of something before that final awards total. So it's important to note we finally have the final number. And to your point, this is where it gets very, very interesting. The West Coast offers were, I don't want to say they were too cheap, but there was at least enough offers within striking range of that lowest price. It was okay. It was normal. The East Coast is where things really got weird. The lowest price offered was a full $15 a ton lower than the next lowest price. There was very few tons offered within $20. And that's where all of a sudden we started to look at it and say, okay, this is where they're going to struggle. That's why the 430,000 tons versus a 2 million ton goal does not surprise us. And so now the question we've continued to ask, the question we could internally and externally, were the tons not there, or was this a pricing issue? And it sure feels as though this is a pricing issue. The offers looked at it and said, no, we don't want to participate this low number. If when we press back and say, if the price had been, let's say, $15, $20 a ton higher than what was offered, how would this have looked? And everybody's like, oh, they probably would have got the tons that they needed. So it's important to note, this is not a situation where the global S&D is extremely tight. This is just the traders and the manufacturers saying, yeah, no, you know what? I'll drag my feet, and I think that India needs to come back into the marketplace to the second tender. We'll try our hand. We think the prices will be higher that time, and we don't believe that there'll be much of a problem. But again, we don't know these things until they come to an end. And at this point, we don't even know when the tender is coming. We think they'll be looking for about 1.5 million. We think that they'll come here in the next few weeks, but that's a lot of thinking. That's not a lot of knowing yet.
And actually, Josh, given these challenges with its recent tenders, the RCF now seems focused on securing larger, more long-term urea supply agreements. What's behind that strategy, and how could it reshape how they buy going forward?
It surprises me that it's taken this long for them to look at it.
Okay.
I've long held the idea that the way that India approaches the marketplace was brilliant in the past. In the past, urea supplies were plentiful. We didn't have a problem. There was no talk of tight S&Ds or anything like that. And so when India came out and said, I'm looking for 1 million, 2 million ton, the market's like, oh my gosh, this is a huge sales opportunity. I have to get very aggressive with my price to make sure I get to participate in this very big opportunity. That's not today's world. Today's world is a much, much tighter S&D with a lot of global volatility, with a lot of problems with supply, with wars, with sanctions, with all these things going on. So now when India steps in the marketplace and they're, pounding their chest and saying, I need 2 million ton, the market looks at it and says, wow, that's a lot of tons. There's not that much supply out there. I should probably jack my price up if I want to participate in this. And so it's got the opposite effect. And I think that India's seen it from their point of view and saying, every time we step in for a major tender, the price goes up. We are getting taken advantage of. We're tired of this process. Rather than continuing this, rather than change the way that they approach it from a tonnage, meaning instead of doing 2 million ton, do 3, 4, 5 different smaller tenders. It looks like they're trying to go out there and say, listen, maybe we just go ahead and lock up big volume contracts that are guaranteed to come over here. It's a 2, 3 multi-year contract over a big chunk of tons over the entire year. That's that much less that we have to go into the marketplace and have these games played against us. Now, I don't know if they'll be successful in finding these. They've got some pretty stringent rules around it. They're trying to go after the big manufacturers. They don't want to let the traders in there. They don't want to let the value chain in there. They want to buy it directly. Again, they're trying to save money. You can't blame anybody for doing that. but we'll have to wait and see if they're actually successful in this approach. They could just be something where they say, we're looking for this. At the end of the day, they don't get anything.
Yeah, it does seem like it's playing a lot of games there. One last thing before we let you go. Last week, we talked about new U.S. sanctions targeting Russian oil, but sparing fertilizer, which is great for farmers, obviously, in America. Now, how would that decision shape global supply chains and price stability? Can you walk me through each one and what the effect would be?
Yeah, let's say next week we jump on here and we're like, oh my gosh, the worst case scenario happened.
Hmm.
President Trump went ahead with sanctions. He has included all energy, and fertilizer falls into that energy bucket. What does the world look like? Let's start with urea. Right now, Russia is the single largest nation supplier to the US for urea. So if there are sanctions and we shut off those flows, from a North American perspective, there's going to be an immediate reaction. It's more than likely going to be higher because the market's going to say, oh my gosh, we just lost our biggest supplier. We're in trouble. Now, I think over time, because you look at how many producers of urea, how many tons are produced around the world, I think that we'll reshape trade flows. We'll be fine. We will find those tons, presuming we don't have that sanction happen too close to spring season, but there will be an immediate, oh no. And then from Russia's standpoint, they just lost a major destination. That's going to be hurtful, except that they can now start to target some other places. They can maybe start going after India. They can start going after Brazil, some of these friendly countries that are part of the BRIC alliance. And those two countries alone eat up more than what Russia does. So we think the global trade patterns figure themselves out. Same thing for potash. Russia's the second biggest supplier to the U.S. There's going to be an immediate, oh no, what happened? But then we'll kind of figure it out. We'll get more from Canada, more from Israel, more from other places. And Russia will focus on other countries around the world to replace what they used to send to the U.S., where it gets very, very difficult. And this is the one that still kind of worries me. Every time I go for a training run, I think about this. If we sanction Russian UAN, this has global implications. This is no longer about changing trade flows. Russia is half of the UAN tons that flow into the U.S. And so if that flow stops, the U.S. has to find the tons from somewhere else. And that's the question. Where are you going to find this? These tons don't exist around the world with all the production problems going on. So that creates a situation where we don't quite know where we're going to get this product from. On the flip side, Russia loses the U.S., its last major demand destination. Can they really keep up the exports if they've got nowhere else to go with it? So suddenly they could drop their exports by 1 million. Now we're talking about a global S&D fundamental shift that is going to pressure prices to the higher side. So urea, potash, we think there'll be a little bit of an, oh no, how do we figure this out? And then we will. UAN, I don't know what the solution is afterwards. That's where we continue to say, we really hope any sanctions that happen, if there are any, do not include fertilizer, because UAN, I don't know how to make that equation work.
Josh, thank you so much for your insight. I know we won't see you next week, but we will see you in 2 weeks. So have a wonderful time doing whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah, I'm going to try and actually take time off. I will leave Friday. I'm going to leave my work cell phone at the office. I'm going to leave my work laptop at the office. So if you guys could hold the fort down in a couple weeks, don't let anything massive happen while I'm gone.
You
Please.
just
I know we need stuff to talk about, but let's not have it be some groundbreaking fundamental change for the world.
don't worry. If fertilizers get added to the sanction list, we will call you even while you're on holiday. Um, anyway, thank you so much. And thank you to our viewers for watching. For more financial content, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.